In the small, isolated town of Gravepine, there was a man named Adam. He was a quiet, unassuming blacksmith who lived at the edge of town, away from the others. The villagers never understood him. His eyes were too hollow, his demeanor too distant. Whispers circulated that he had made a pact with dark forces, that his forge worked by a fire deeper than any natural flame. But Adam never spoke of it, and his work was always impeccable. One cold winter night, a series of strange occurrences began to plague Gravepine. Livestock went missing, crops withered in the soil, and eerie shadows haunted the edges of the woods. The villagers were desperate. They believed Adam, with his oddities and strange ways, was to blame. Fear turned to hate, and the whispers grew, louder, fueled by the growing desperation of the town. The night of the trial arrived. The villagers, driven by fear and the unknown, dragged Adam from his home, accusing him of witchcraft and of summoning the darkness that tormented them. They bound him in the center of the town square and built a pyre beneath him, the flames licking the air as they set him alight. His screams echoed through the night, but no one dared intervene. As Adam burned, the flames surged unnaturally, as if the fire itself were alive and feeding on something more than just wood. His body twisted in agony, and with a final, anguished cry, he was consumed by the fire. The flames that had claimed his life flickered and died, but the villagers, satisfied by the vengeance they believed they had exacted, returned to their homes, thinking it was over. But they were wrong. One by one, over the course of the next week, strange things began happening in Gravepine. At night, the wind carried a sound, a low, guttural hiss, like the crackle of burning wood. Fires in the homes of the villagers would flare up violently, only to die down with no explanation. Doors slammed shut on their own, and shadows twisted unnaturally on the walls. The first victim was the town blacksmith, a grizzled man who had led the mob that set Adam ablaze. He was found in his shop, his body charred and contorted, as though he had been consumed by an unseen fire. The words "burn" were carved into the walls in blood, dripping as if freshly written. The town thought it was an accident, but deep down, they knew something was wrong. That night, the town's oldest resident, the town historian, dreamed of Adam, his face twisted in agony, his body a burnt, scarred horror. In the dream, Adam whispered, "You burned me, and now I will burn you all." The next day, the historian was found dead in his bed, his skin blackened, as if he had been burned from the inside out. The townsfolk were paralyzed with terror. One by one, the people of Gravepine were killed. Each death was horrifyingly similar. The victims would be found in their homes, their bodies singed, charred, and burned as though the fire that had consumed Adam had returned to claim them. Their eyes were wide with terror, frozen in their final moments. The only sign left behind was a faint, ghostly figure, Adam, standing over the body. His form was a twisted shadow, his eyes glowing with an unearthly fire, and his skin was a patchwork of burned flesh and smoke. The air around him crackled with the scent of charred wood and sulfur. Soon the town was empty, save for the dead. No one remained to tell the story of what had happened. Gravepine became a ghost town, its houses decaying in silence. The wind still whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faintest echo of Adam's tormented cry. And though the fires had long since gone out, the people of Gravepine never truly escaped the flames. The ghost of Adam still roams the town, waiting for anyone foolish enough to step foot in the cursed land. His vengeance was far from over, for in death, he became the very fire that had destroyed him. No one dares visit Gravepine anymore. But if you ever find yourself near the edge of the woods, you might hear it. The sound of fire crackling in the distance. And if you listen closely, you might hear Adam's voice, twisted by the flames, whispering your name. Burn with me, the town. of Gravepine had been left to rot in the aftermath of Adam's vengeance. With every passing year, the whispers grew quieter, but the fear of the town's dark history lingered like a shadow over the surrounding land. People spoke of it in hushed tones, warning travelers to steer clear of the forgotten place. Yet, as with all forgotten places, curiosity has a way of drawing the brave or the foolish to it. It was a decade after the massacre when a group of adventurers, eager to explore the long-abandoned town and uncover its mysteries, made their way through the dense woods that surrounded Gravepine. They had heard the stories, the rumors of the cursed town, but none of them truly believed. After all, what was a ghost story but that? Just a story. They arrived as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and orange, casting an eerie glow over the town's skeletal remains. The once sturdy homes were now little more than rotting frames and decaying foundations, overrun with thick vines and moss. The wind had a strange stillness to it, as if the very air was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The group set up camp in the town square, unaware that their presence had awakened something dark and ancient. As they sat around the fire, laughing and talking, a cold breeze swept through the streets, extinguishing their flames with an unnatural swiftness. The temperature dropped, and the once humorous tone of their conversation faltered, replaced by a creeping unease. One of them, a young man named Jacob, ventured to explore the old blacksmith shop, the building where Adam had worked before his death. The shop stood at the edge of the square, a crumbling testament to the past. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of rust and decaying wood, but there was something more, an acrid, almost sulfurous stench, like the lingering trace of something burnt. Jacob's flashlight flickered as he explored the shop, his footsteps slow and careful. The tools were still there, scattered around the room, though covered in layers of dust. But as he turned to leave, something caught his eye. A strange symbol was carved into the wooden floor, a circle with intricate lines running through it, forming a pattern that seemed to pulse in the dim light. His hand reached for it, but before he could touch the symbol, the air seemed to crackle, and a low, guttural hiss echoed in the silence. The ground beneath him shook, and the shadows in the room deepened, coiling like smoke. Suddenly there was a sound, a voice, faint but unmistakable, whispering from the darkness. "Run!" Jacob spun around, but there was nothing there. The cold air pressed against his skin, and the stench of sulfur grew stronger. He felt a chill crawl down his spine, an icy hand tightening around his throat. He turned to flee, but as he reached the door, he froze in place. His eyes widened in horror as he saw it, a figure, rising from the darkness like a living nightmare. It was Adam, but not the man he had once been. His skin was blackened, peeling, away in places revealing charred muscle and bone beneath. His eyes glowed with an unnatural fire, and his mouth stretched into a cruel, twisted grin. "Why did you come here?" Adam's voice was a rasp, like the sound of burning wood. "You woke me from my slumber. Now you will burn with me." Jacob tried to scream, but no sound came. The air around him ignited, the heat so intense that his flesh began to crack and blister. His body trembled, unable to move, his mind screaming in terror. He could feel the fire, but it wasn't just external, it was inside him, searing his very soul. The others outside heard nothing, but they felt it. The temperature dropped further, and the very ground beneath them seemed to hum with a sinister energy. They called out to Jacob, but there was no answer. As they rushed toward the blacksmith's shop, they found nothing. No trace of Jacob, no sign of struggle, nothing but an empty room and the smell of burning. That night, one by one, they were claimed by the ghost of Adam. The adventurers scattered, fleeing into the night, but it was already too late. Every path they took led them deeper into Gravepine's cursed heart, and no matter where they went, the fire followed them. The town had become a prison for those who dared disturb its peace. The very land had been marked by Adam's vengeful presence, and his spirit hung over it like a dark storm cloud, forever waiting for the next souls foolish enough to trespass. But as the years turned into decades, Adam's story became even darker. It was said that after claiming the adventurers, he returned to the town, seeking out those who had been responsible for his death, those who had set him on fire. But what he found horrified him. The people of Gravepine had lived on in terror, haunted by their own guilt, and many had died in strange and mysterious ways, their bodies twisted and burned as though they too had been consumed by fire. Some whispered that Adam was not the only one who had died in the flames that night, that something darker, something older, had been awakened. On moonless nights, the screams of the past could still be heard, echoing through the charred remnants of Gravepine. And though no one dared to speak of it, some believed that Adam was not truly gone. His spirit roamed the town, feeding off the guilt and fear of the last remaining souls, trapped in a cycle of endless torment. The curse of Gravepine had not been lifted. It had only grown stronger. And as for Adam, he had become the embodiment of the fire that had once consumed him, a force of pure rage, burning through the very soul of the land, seeking to claim anyone who dared to walk into the town's cursed borders. So, if you ever find yourself near Gravepine, beware, for Adam's fire is waiting, an unquenchable, insatiable hunger that has burned for years. And once you step into the town, it will be too late to turn back. The fire will find you, and you will burn. The years dragged on, and the legend of Gravepine slowly faded from memory, slipping into the cracks of forgotten history. The town became nothing more than a cautionary tale passed on by the elderly to keep children away from the woods, a story meant to scare the curious and the brave. But the curse of Adam, the vengeful spirit of a man who had been burned alive, was far from forgotten. It simmered beneath the surface, waiting for a moment of weakness to rise again. It was nearly 50 years after Adam's death when a young historian named Evelyn, intrigued by the tale of Gravepine, decided to uncover the truth behind the legend. She had heard the stories as a child, but like so many others, she had dismissed them as nothing more than superstition and folklore. Determined to separate myth from reality, Evelyn packed her bags and set out on her own journey to the forgotten town. She arrived in the early hours of the morning, the sky pale with the faintest light of dawn. As she stepped into the woods that led to Gravepine, she felt an overwhelming sense of unease. The trees seemed to loom over her, their twisted branches resembling fingers reaching out, trying to keep her from crossing the threshold into the cursed land. But Evelyn pressed on. The stories, she believed, were nothing more than the fabrications of fearful minds. She would prove them wrong. The town was just as she had imagined, a ghostly remnant of what it once was. Buildings sagged under their own weight, walls cracked and crumbling, and the streets were overgrown with weeds and brambles. The air was thick with silence, an oppressive stillness that wrapped around her like a blanket. As Evelyn walked deeper into the heart of Gravepine, she felt it, an undeniable presence, like something was watching her. But she told herself it was nothing more than her imagination. She walked past the ruins of homes, the abandoned well in the square, the charred remains of the blacksmith's shop. She reached for her notebook, jotting down observations, trying to quell the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. As evening fell, she made her way to the town square, setting up camp near the well, where the flames had once consumed Adam. She ate a quick meal, but her thoughts were troubled. The stories she had read about the people of Gravepine, their cruelty, their fear, their deaths, had seemed distant, abstract. But now, standing in the center of the town where they had been trapped, she could feel it. The weight of their guilt, their torment, their fear. The wind began to stir, carrying with it the faintest scent of sulfur, a smell she couldn't place. The temperature dropped suddenly, and Evelyn shivered. She wrapped her arms around herself, looking around for any sign of what was happening. That was when she saw it. A flicker in the corner of her eye, something moving just beyond the edge of the town square. She turned, heart hammering in her chest, and there, standing at the far end of the square, was a figure. At first, it was just a shadow, a faint outline in the dimming light. But as it stepped forward, the air grew colder, and the figure became clearer. It was a man, or something that had once been a man. His skin was charred and peeling, hanging in patches like strips of burnt cloth. His eyes glowed, not with life, but with an unnatural fire, as though his very soul had been consumed by it. His mouth twisted into a cruel smile, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was the twisted expression of a soul trapped in endless torment, the remnants of a man who had been murdered by the very people he had trusted. "Evelyn," the voice rasped, hollow and distant. "You came to uncover the truth, but now you will learn it." The words chilled her to the bone, though she tried to shake off the fear. She had come for answers, and she wouldn't leave without them. What do you want?" she managed to whisper, her voice trembling. "I want you to understand," Adam's ghost said, his voice carrying an unbearable weight. "They burned me, and in doing so, they unleashed something far worse than death. Something far worse than what you can imagine. And now I burn for them." The fire in his eyes flared, and Evelyn felt a surge of heat, not from a flame, but from the burning anger that radiated from him. It was as if the very air around her had caught fire, and yet the flames remained unseen. "You will never leave," Adam whispered, his voice a tortured hiss. "No one ever does. I will make sure of it." Before she could react, a searing pain shot through her chest, as if the very air had turned to fire, choking her lungs. She stumbled backward, gasping for breath. The ground beneath her seemed to ripple, like the earth itself was alive, burning, with an unquenchable fury. And then it hit her. The truth of Adam's curse. It wasn't just about vengeance. It was about something much worse. The people of Gravepine had burned him, yes, but in doing so, they had condemned themselves to an eternal cycle of suffering, trapped within the very flames that had claimed him. Evelyn tried to run, but her legs wouldn't move. The pain in her chest intensified, and she collapsed to the ground, her vision blurring as the darkness closed in. In her final moments, she understood. Adam had not merely been a victim. He had become the embodiment of the town's sin. He was the fire that had consumed them all, and now it was too late to escape. And in that instant, as she lay on the cold earth of Gravepine, she saw it. The faces of those who had died before her, twisted and burned beyond recognition, their eyes wide with horror and guilt, trapped in the flames with her. The last thing Evelyn heard was Adam's voice, not in anger, but in a voice that was sad, hollow, as if he too had come to understand the true cost of his vengeance. "I never wanted this," he whispered, "but now we are all fire, and we will never be free." And just like that, the fire consumed her. Years later, when the townspeople of nearby villages spoke of Gravepine, they no longer spoke of a curse or of vengeance. They spoke of the lost souls, the ones who had wandered too far, seeking something they should never have sought. But the truth was darker. For Evelyn, like those before her, would never leave. The fire that had taken Adam, the fire that had consumed Gravepine, would never die. It would burn forever, and those who dared disturb it would join the souls that had already been lost. And so, Gravepine remained, silent, forgotten, but always waiting, its fire never truly extinguished, its curse never truly lifted. It was a place where no one would ever be free, where vengeance and suffering had become one.